Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and for this anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, I wanted to highlight a first-hand account of Joseph Kershaw's brigade of Longstreet's corps as they attack the Wheatfield at Gettysburg. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, and purchase something from the Teespring store or Etsy shop. Every little bit helps. Thank you. Longstreet passed us once or twice, but he had his eyes cast to the ground, as if in deep study, his mind disturbed, and had more the look of gloom than I had ever noticed before. Well might the great chieftain look cast down with the weight of this great responsibility resting upon him. There seemed to be an air of heaviness hanging around all. The soldiers trod with a firm but seeming heavy tread. Not that there was any want of confidence or doubt of ultimate success, but each felt within himself that this was to be the decisive battle of the war, and as a consequence it would be stubborn and bloody. Soldiers looked in the faces of their fellow soldiers with a silent sympathy that spoke more eloquently than words and exhibition of brotherly love never before witnessed in the First Corps. They felt a sympathy for those whom they knew before the setting of the sun would feel touch of the elbow for the last time, and who must fall upon this distant field and in an enemy's country. About noon we were moved over the crest and halted behind a stone wall that ran parallel to a country road, our center being near a gateway in the wall. As soon as the halt was made, the soldiers fell down, and soon the most of them were fast asleep, while here it was necessary for some troops of hills to pass over up and through the gate. The head of the column was led by a doughty general clad in a brilliant new uniform, a crimson sash encircling his waist, its deep, heavy hanging down to his sword scabbard, while great golden curls hung in maiden ringlets to his very shoulders. His movement was superb, and he sat his horse in true knightly manner. On the whole, such a turnout was a sight seldom witnessed by the staid soldiers of the First Corps. As he was passing, a man in Company D, 3rd South Carolina, roused up from his broken sleep, saw for the first time the soldier wander with long curls. He called out to him, not knowing he was an officer of such rank, "Say, mister, come right down out of that hair," a foolish and unnecessary expression that was common throughout the army when anything unusual hove in sight. This hail roused all the ire in the flashy general. He became as mad as a March hare, and wheeling his horse, dashed up to where the challenge appeared to have come from, and demanded in an angry tone, "Who was that spoke? Who commands this company?" And as no reply was given, he turned away, saying, "If I only knew who it was that insulted me, I would put a ball in him." But as he rode off, the soldier gave him a Parthian shot by calling after him, "Say, mister, don't get so mad about it. I thought you were some wagon master." Slowly again our column began moving to the right. The center of the division was halted in front of Little Round Top. Kershaw was then on the right, Barksdale with his Mississippians on the left, Wofford and Sims with their Georgians in rear as support. Everything was quiet in our front, as if the enemy had put his house in order and awaited our coming. Kershaw took position behind a tumbled-down wall to await Hood's movements on our right, and who was to open the battle by the assault on Round Top. The country on our right, through which Hood had to maneuver, was very much broken and thickly studded with trees and mountain undergrowth, which delayed that general in getting in battle line. Anderson's Georgians, with Hood's old Texas brigade under Robertson, was on McLaws' immediate right. Next to Kershaw, Law's Alabama brigade was on the extreme right, and made the first advance. On McLaws' left was Wilcox of General Anderson's division of the 3rd Corps, with Posey and other troops to his left, these to act more as a brace to Longstreet as he advanced to the assault. However, most of them were drawn into the vortex of battle before the close of the day. Major William Wallace of the 2nd commanded the brigade's skirmish line, or sharpshooters, and now some distance in our front. A battery of 10 guns was immediately in our rear, in a grove of oaks, and drew on us a heavy fire when the artillery duel began. All troops in line, the batteries in position, nothing was wanting but the signal gun to put these mighty forces in motion. Ewell had been engaged during the morning in a desultory battle far to our left and beyond the town, but now quieted down. A blue puff of smoke, a deafening report from one of the guns of the Washington artillery of New Orleans, followed in quick succession by others, gave the signal to both armies. The battle was now on. It was the plan of action for Hood to move forward first and engage the enemy, and when once the battle was well under way on the right, McLaws to press his columns to the front. Law with his Alabamians was closing around the southern base of Great or Round Top, while Robertson with his 3 Texas regiments and 1 Arkansas and Anderson with his Georgians were pushing their way through thickets and over boulders to the front base of the Round Tops and the gorges between the two. He could easily determine their progress by the rebel yell as it rang out in triumph along the mountainsides. The battery in our rear was drawing a fearful fire upon us as we lay behind the stone fence, and all were too anxious to be ordered forward. Barksdale on our left moved out first, just in front of the famous peach orchard. A heavy battery was posted there, supported by McCandless's and Willard's divisions, and began raking Barksdale from the start. The brave old Mississippian, who was soon to lose his life, asked permission to charge and take the battery, but was refused. Kershaw next gave the command, "Forward," and the men sprang to their work with all the will and determination and spread their steps to the right and left as they advanced. Kershaw was on foot, prepared to follow the line of battle immediately in rear, looking cool, composed, and grand, his steel gray eyes flashing the fire he felt in his soul. The shelling from the enemy on the ridge in front had up to this time been mostly confined to replying to our batteries, but as soon as this long array of bristling bayonets moved over the crest and burst out suddenly in the open, in full view of the cannon-crowned battlements, all guns were turned upon us. The shelling from Round Top was terrific enough to make the stoutest hearts quake, while the battery down at the base of the ridge, in the orchard, was raking Barksdale and Kershaw right and left with grape and shrapnel. Simm's Georgians soon moved up on our right and between Kershaw and Hood's left, but its brave commander fell mortally wounded at the very commencement of the attack. Kershaw advanced directly against Little Round Top, the strongest point in the enemy's line, and defended by Ayres's regulars, the best disciplined and most stubborn fighters in the Federal army. The battery in the orchard began graping Kershaw's left as soon as it came in range, the right being protected by a depression in the ground over which they marched. Not a gun was allowed to be fired either at sharpshooters that were firing on our front from behind boulders and trees in a grove we were nearing, or at the cannoneers who were raking our front on the left. Men fell here and there from the deadly Minnie-balls, while great gaps or swaths were swept away in our ranks by shells from the batteries on the hills, or by the destructive grape and canister from the orchard. On marched the determined men across the open expanse, closing together as their comrades fell out. Barksdale had fallen, but his troops were still moving to the front and over the battery that was making such havoc in their ranks. Sims, too, had fallen, but his Georgians never wavered nor faltered, but moved like a huge machine in the face of those myriads of death-dealing missiles. Just as we entered the woods, the infantry opened upon us a withering fire, especially from up the gorge that ran in the direction of Round Top. Firing now became general along the whole line on both sides. The center of the 3rd Regiment and some parts of the other regiments were partially protected by boulders and large trees, but the greater part fought in the open field or in sparsely timbered groves of small trees. The fight now waged fast and furious. The move to the right was to let Wofford in between Barksdale and Kershaw. Barksdale was pressing up the gorge that lay between Little Round Top and the ridge, was making successful battle, and in all likelihood would have succeeded had it not been for General Warren. General Meade's chief engineer, being on the ground, and seeing the danger, grasped the situation at once, called up all the available force and lined the stone walls that led along the gorge with infantry. Brigade after brigade of Federal infantry was now rushed to this citadel, while the crown of Little Round Top was literally covered with artillery. Ayres's regulars were found to be a stubborn set by Kershaw's troops. The Federal volunteers on our right and left gave way to the Southern valor, but the regulars stood firm, protected as they were by the great boulders along their lines. Barksdale had passed beyond us as the enemy's line bent backward at this point, and was receiving the whole shock of the battle in his front, while a terrific fire was coming from down the gorge and from behind hedges on the hillside. But the Mississippians held on like grim death till Wofford with his Georgians, who was moving in majestic style across the open field in their rear, came to his support. General Wofford was a splendid officer and equally as hard a fighter. He advanced his brigade through the deadly hail of bullets and took possession on Barksdale's right and Kershaw's left, and soon the roar of his guns were mingling with those of their comrades. The whole division was now in action. The enemy began to give way and scamper up the hillside, but Meade by this time had the bulk of his army around and in rear of the Round Top, and fresh troops were continually being rushed in to take the places of or reinforce those already in action. Hood's whole force was now also engaged, as well as part of A.P. Hill's on our left. The smoke became so dense, the noise of small arms and the tumult raised by the rebel yell so great that the voices of officers attempting to give commands were hushed in the pandemonium. Along to the right of the 3rd, especially up the little ravine, the fire was concentrated on those who held this position and was terrific beyond description, forcing a part of the line back to the stone house. This fearful shock of battle was kept up along the whole line without intermission till night threw her sable curtains over the scene of carnage and bloodshed and put an end to the strife. Wofford and Barksdale had none to reinforce them at the gorge, and had to fight it out single-handed and alone, while the regulars, with their backs to the base of Little Round Top, protected by natural formations, were too strong to be dislodged by Kershaw. As soon as the firing ceased, the troops were withdrawn to near our position of the forenoon.